Welcome to Zaller Talk. On this episode, we talk with Salar Sheik about common issues facing restaurant operators, dealing with minimum wage, rest breaks, hiring and firing employees, and background checks. I guess we're live. Today we have Salar visiting the podcast. He's actually our first interview for the podcast. I appreciate you coming in. And, I've known Salar through the California Restaurant Association, sits on the Los Angeles chapter board with me. But why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and how you got into the restaurant industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Anthony. Definitely appreciate the invite. And my name is Salar Sheik. I'm the founder of Savory Hospitality Restaurant Consulting. Well, we've been in business for quite a while, actually. I've been consulting for roughly around 6.5, 7 years. Started off my business basically working in the industry. I've done everything as a child. I've been a dishwasher, line cook, prep cook.
How'd you get into the industry?
It was by default, just, make money, eat free food as a child, be in high school.
Family at all involved?
No, my family's definitely not in this industry. Yeah? They're doctors and engineers.
Okay.
So actually it started off young, working in the kitchen, went to college to pursue a biology degree, which was great. But in the meantime, I just ended up working in restaurants, loved it, loved the atmosphere, the interaction, really meet a community. Everyone in the community worked in restaurants. Ended up just working my way up out of the kitchen, didn't want to smell like onions. And nothing bad about working in the kitchen, is just I wanted to get my hands on everything. And just worked in every position as I could to learn the business. Ended up being a director of operations, GM, kind of flourished. Did a little side consulting, and now, it's my full-time gig, loving it. Do a lot of business, a lot of helping restaurants in the LA area, and obviously the surrounding area as well.
Nice.
And this is where I landed, basically.
Nice. So how long have you had Savory Hospitality?
I started Savory Hospitality roughly 4.5 years ago.
Great. And based here in LA, right?
It's based in Los Angeles.
Clients throughout the state, or?
Throughout the country, and a few overseas coming over. We have some few concepts overseas in Asia, Europe. So it's definitely reached a lot further than I expected.
Very cool. Very cool. So, there's a lot of overlap given the legal side of things that I handle for restaurants, and then being a consultant, and you guys deal a lot. Well, do you handle some HR issues, and what kind of issues do you consult with?
Well, we do a broad aspect. When I first started, it was basically helping restaurants open or saving restaurants, which we do quite a bit.
Okay.
But the biggest factor that has changed in the last 2.5 years has been kind of getting people out of hot water and navigating through the speed bumps they're hitting. And all their speed bumps have been pretty much legal issues. And number one and foremost, I'm not an attorney. But I've learned a lot about law through, obviously yourself. And it's just, legally, it seems in California, it's just ripe that everyone seems to be in litigation, a lawsuit, some type of employment issue. And it all stems from day one.
Okay. So you have an eye towards preventing litigation and how to run a restaurant to avoid litigation?
Absolutely. If they're established, I look at the pitfalls they have currently in their processing, in their action, their morale, just everything they do day in and day out to keep them out of hot water. So they don't have to pick up the phone and call you and be like, hey, I got served with some papers. Yeah. Can you help me out?
But it doesn't stop there though, right? What you bring to the table even comes down to day-to-day operations, how to lay out a kitchen.
Absolutely. It's
even demographics if you're going to open a restaurant.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. And it's a lot about, menu planning, labor, budgeting, just getting the vendors together to make a profitable business at the end of the day. And my goal is to thrive a business so they grow. And, legally, it's been a tough area in the state.
I bet. What's your most favorite part of advising clients or aspect of running a restaurant?
Well, advising clients, I think my favorite part is kind of the end result. Seeing someone have a bit of doubt in themselves and in the process, and then seeing at the end, be like, wow, you saved me X amount of dollars, X amount of headaches. My visions come to life. I think I understand people's vision. and I can tailor it to make it actually successful. And that's the most rewarding part of the business, to be honest. And you got to understand that restaurants are not just businesses; they're communities. A lot of people in the community work in these restaurants, and every dollar you spend in a restaurant goes a long way.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, that's what I like about advising restaurant owners and operators. And the environment's just cool. And, I've got clients in other industries, but you come into a restaurant, they're always offering you a free meal or something, and
the
super
sense of
friendly.
community is always there.
Yeah.
And, that's something that will always be there, no matter, the years go by, a sense of community will always be there between the staff, the management, the ownership, and it's a great atmosphere, and it's something that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Since probably beginning of time, there's been some type of restaurant
That's
in
true.
caveman days where served like T-bone steaks.
That's true. And it'll be around for a long time, hopefully here in California, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
So, from an operational standpoint, then, what do you see operators do? Most common mistake that you've got to come in and fix?
Well, most common mistake is assuming what they don't know. As part of a consultant, it's not knowing every answer. It's also knowing when to outsource those answers. Being legal advice, being something accounting wise, but a lot of times operators tend to, and also oversight of just this is not an issue for me. They might not think they have issues in their HR department, in their kitchens, in the front of the house, behind the bar. And those are things that I identify and bring to light. If it's not something in our wheelhouse that we can remedy, we seek the right people and the right professionals to fix that issue.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Everybody's trying to do their best, but the day-to-day, takes over, and then before you know it, some issue that you didn't even imagine comes out of the blue. And
yeah, absolutely. And there's been clients where they've talked about, hey, we're looking at doing a handbook for the past 4.5 years. And I go, what? An employee handbook? I mean, that should have been, day negative 100 you had that book.
Right.
And we put a handbook together. We throw it, we put it in the mix. We get it legally approved. And it's actually recently happened what a client was, we did a handbook, and then they got served with papers for an employee that got terminated 8 months prior to that handbook.
Okay.
So
Yep.
They could have used it back then.
Yep. And so when you come in, what's the first thing you approach an operator with? Do you take a look at their policies, handbooks, things like that, see if they have that set up, or?
Absolutely. First of all, we ask them what's their HR situation status. We ask them, what are your processes? What are your paperwork? What are your handbooks? And that's kind of, something that most of them have a basis, but it's not refined. It's been thrown in the back burner. It's been since the opening. If it's a 4 or 5 year restaurant, it's dated. As you know, law has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, almost every other month in this state. So,
yeah. No, and it's something and I hear an operator, understand where they're coming from. Start operating, time goes fast, and some of these clients call me sometimes like, hey, I need to update the handbook. It feels like I just did it like 6 months ago, but they're reminding me that it's been done 2 years ago. And it's like, oh yeah, we better get on that and update it. But it's something that's hard to keep on, and it's good to have like an in-house HR or outside HR consultant setting up some of these deadlines, reminding them about that policy development, and that keeping up to date with the law, sexual harassment training for managers, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's tough for our operations. If you're a thriving restaurant, you're moving at a million miles an hour. And if you're just struggling, you're just struggling to make it end, to make it end of the line. So what things that get thrown on the back burner, I bring up to the foresight. And actually, talking about handbooks and everything put together, that's a big deal of our operation, because that kind of lays down the guideline. And I know a lot of times I looked at you for advice, and I would advise anyone listening that have an attorney look at your handbook. Don't have your consultant. Don't have your manager. You review it, but have a labor law attorney. I've had a few clients that, have your handbook been reviewed? And they're like, yeah, or we have a real estate attorney that looks at them. And I go, that's, you just, you don't take your car, to the airplane mechanic to repair. You take it to an auto mechanic.
Right.
And I tell them, you have to get a labor law attorney to really look at your book and see if it's on par.
Very good advice.
That's some consulting right there. Know what you know and what don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And the restaurant industry too is so specific. Same with you, like a consultant. You don't go to a business consultant for your restaurant. There's so many different issues in a restaurant, and same with an attorney. I mean, employment law attorneys, you get that specific, but even employment law attorneys have dealt with restaurants in the restaurant industry. There's certain issues that come up time and time again, and it's good to have that knowledge base of consultants and attorneys coming into your establishment that know the industry, have been around the industry, and can point these issues out that somebody else that doesn't have that experience can't bring to the table.
No, absolutely.
So talking about handbooks, what are good policies or common policies that you like to see in a handbook, and what's your approach to that?
Obviously, this has been the basis of handbook policies where it's, clock in, clock out, uniform standards. We see a lot about, sexual harassment, reporting. I think a big one is like how to report. Anonymous reporting is a nice one that we like to see. I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, but how do you set that up? I see that a lot for smaller companies where, it's just the owner. They don't have an HR person. Do you have an outside company for the reporting aspect of that, for like complaining about harassment or anything else? Or?
There are some outsourced HR companies that have a tip line where you can report harassment. Other ways that people have gone about it, mom and pop restaurants, they've developed like their own email address where they can email a complaint anonymously to that email, and they do a follow through, which is also great. And the paper trail goes a million miles.
Yeah.
So if they bring up an issue, they follow through. If they get a lawsuit on them about that issue, they say, hey, we were working on it. It was reported. It's something that was brought to our attention.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
I'm a big proponent of email documenting, even for managers to document conversations. Send an email to themselves. Had a conversation with this employee. We discussed this, and it's time stamped. It could still be faked, but it's a lot harder to fake that because there's going to be a lot of like electronic record on that.
Yeah, and also talk about outsourcing HR. I think there's some negatives and positives behind that. The positive is you have an outside source, kind of unbiased view, which is nice. And most of those outsourced HR agencies do pretty good job, thorough job, and they stay up to date on the current policies. But I've also seen some negatives where they're not in tune with the restaurant or the hospitality outlet themselves, and it kind of they don't see eye to eye correctly, and that's something that it's probably a speed bump more than anything.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. The question I get a lot too of, I'm growing. When does it make sense to bring that HR component into the company?
I'll be honest with you, it's always great to have that HR component, and I know for a lot.
Even when you have 5 employees, though.
Well, I mean, there are outsourced portions that you can do. If you can afford budget-wise to do it, I say go for it.
Okay.
100%. And when I first started consulting, I never was keen on HR as I am now. But now it's such a huge part of our operation. It's something where I, educate myself, go to the lectures, learn more and more about it. But you can't keep up.
Yeah.
And even as a mom and pop owner, one lawsuit could put you under. So really budget out and think about how much you get to spend on that HR portion.
Okay. Yep. So, and you don't follow any kind of rules of thumb then for like 25 employees definitely need to bring in HR at that point, or do you have anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when we see you have 35 plus employees, you want to have some type of HR system implied. I mean, this in system, keep going. 35, your liability goes much higher, and the longer you're in business, your liability goes up, as you know. So. I would stick it at 35 employees, and then now you got to start looking at really being serious about what you're doing.
Yeah. And then you say system. Are you talking about software or just like a HR system, a policy and procedures put together?
Having designated people and having real designated people.
Okay.
Not saying, hey, our head of HR is blah, blah, blah from accounting.
Okay.
No, it's actually having a designated number, having a designated person where they can actually go and complain. And usually, to be honest with you, that kind of entails more HR about the management. So the employees, if they have an issue with the management, they have someone to go to.
somebody other than the management to go to.
Exactly.
Right?
So they have kind of an unbiased person, and obviously, I'm sure legally.
Oh, that's huge
sounds
defense
good, right?
when you have that. When that's open, and if the employee uses it, that's great, and you can usually prevent a lot of liability and work out the issue before it becomes a problem. But on the flip side, if the employee doesn't use the complaint procedure and it's an unbiased complaint procedure, that's a huge defense too. So yeah, we definitely like having that in place.
I'm happy to know I've been giving good advice. So
Good.
thanks for confirming that.
Yeah,
I think that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. And then, so you guys, will you handle day-to-day HR issues that come up too for operators? Do they contact you?
Yeah, no, we do. Savory Hospitality, we have a great team. I also have a onboard psychologist, clinical psychologist, which they don't do HR work, and we're not an HR agency, but what we do is we step in and we kind of mediate if there's conflict resolution that we need.
Okay.
Dr. Moshfegh is great. You know, we do group meetings. We're very confidential. We make sure everyone's heard, you know, on an equal platform, and it's all about equality, right?
Yeah.
That's a big portion of it. It's not what it used to be, you know, in the, 30, 40 years ago, where you're just an employee, sit there. No, we give everyone a fair chance, hear their voice, and, just equal to everyone.
Yeah, great. So have you seen an uptick with litigation in the restaurant industry?
Oof. I'll be honest with you, it's insane. The past 2.5 years, it's
and what type of claims are you seeing?
Getting a ton of calls in the Southern California area where, we've had some lawsuits pending for bad fires, bad hires. It's just, it seems, you got to understand that we have all these blankets, right? We have attorneys, we have HR, then we have managers, and we have people. And the people that are running the business need to really be in tune about what they're doing and have some kind of guidance.
Yeah.
And that's what we're kind of struggling right now is, we educate our managers, but on the fly, if you're in hospitality, things are going quick. Every word that's said can hurt you,
right.
As you know. So, we're getting a lot of loss. And be honest with you, just out there's a lot of attorneys hunting for these poor restaurant owners, which are not fat cats making millions of dollars, but everyone assumes that they are. They hold insurance policies, and they're going after them pretty aggressively, especially in Southern California.
Yeah. Yeah, so I haven't necessarily seen an uptick, though, in litigation. It's always constant. The wage and hour issues face this industry a lot just because you have a lot of labor and a lot of people coming into your establishment to work. And I think and there's some incentives to keep working with the employees are there. Servers don't necessarily want to take breaks and want to keep earning tips, and trying to get them to take breaks when they're supposed to can be difficult. And, if you have an operator that's not the most sophisticated on that, they could be set up, and then the employees after the fact claim, well, you really prevented me from taking the break, when it was the employee that really didn't want to take the break and keep making tips.
Well, that's a great point. I think a lot of gray areas there right now, especially with the laws changing, and I hopefully you can clarify this right now, and it's like break laws and penalties. Some people just don't understand. I've encountered clients that have break laws where, you sign off every day, you couldn't take a break.
Would they have the employees waive the break every day?
Yeah, a written one. And then some have just a handbook within the handbook that says, I waive my break whenever I can.
Okay.
What would you advise?
Yeah, so it's important to point out, too, there's two different breaks under California law, the 10-minute rest break and then the 30-minute meal break. The 10-minute rest break, employers have to authorize and permit the employees to take that. Doesn't have to be documented. They don't have to clock in or out for it. It does have to be paid. So if you've got a compliant policy, it's pretty hard for a plaintiff to prove that they didn't get that break. And then it's going to be very individualized type of evidence. And normally how we defend those cases, go around and get other witnesses that worked with that employee to say, look, did you take a break? Did you take a break with this employee? Did your manager ever tell you not to take a break? And usually it's the case, like, nope, we all took our breaks together, we went out back and smoked or did something else, for the 10-minute break. Now, for the 30-minute meal break, it does have to be recorded. So there are some records that should be around normally. And under the Brinker decision, the California Supreme Court did say the employee can waive that 30-minute meal break, but the problem there is if all of your records show nobody's taking the 30-minute meal break, you're setting yourself up for a claim after the fact, after the employee leaves employment with your establishment, to say, well, I was forced to keep working every shift, and now you owe me these back penalties for every meal break that I missed.
So you're saying if we breed a culture of we don't take breaks, which is quite common in the average restaurant world.
Yeah. And so that's what makes me nervous is where you could breed that culture, or even if that's not the culture, that's what it looks like on paper, and that paper is what you're going to be looking at in the litigation. So a lot of operators are going to just still forcing their employees to clock out for the 30-minute meal break. It's an unpaid break. It's good to have the beginning and end recorded of the meal break, and you have to have some kind of record under California law that it's taken. So
and then uninterrupted.
Uninterrupted.
That's a big portion.
So there needs to be procedures in place, and things happen, especially in a busy restaurant where they're going to be interrupted. But have a procedure in place where if they do get interrupted, how to complain about that, and what the company's going to do to fix that. Can they give the 30-minute break later then that's uninterrupted? Do they go ahead and pay the premium pay, the extra 1 hour of pay to just take care of that? If you're super busy, understaffed, somebody called out sick and everybody has to work through the break, that's an option. You can pay people for missing the break, but you need to have that in place where that's being documented. Somebody's looking at the time records and going through and making that calculation. And if you do that, when record the breaks and then are paying penalties for missed breaks, it really shows you've got a compliant policy and trying your best. So if somebody comes up after the fact and says they didn't get their breaks, the burden's really going to be on them at that point then.
That's good to know. I think the penalty portion is a lot of operators are not really in the know. They're starting to get in the know about that. Even if you interrupt them, I believe you have to pay a penalty. And if they can't take one, you take a penalty. If they can't take their 30-minute break within 6 hours, you still have to pay a hour penalty, correct?
Yep. So the timing is before the end of the 5th hour. They have to have that 30-minute meal break. So in the industry, we see it a lot. It's called early lunching. The California Supreme Court said that that's permissible. It's a little gray on when that's permissible or what the parameters are of that. They left that open. I don't know if necessarily an employee can clock in, work for 5 minutes, and then clock out for a 30-minute meal break and then work the rest of their shift. So I generally like to see the 30-minute meal break a little further into the shift, but it is permitted under that decision. But I generally like to see that break towards the middle of the shift as much as possible.
Not to name names, but there was a nightlife group that got sued for making their staff take a break at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. when the place closed down. Basically, it was a nightlife, and you're in nightlife hospitality. There's really tough to get people's breaks in, but there is a way, though. At the end of the day, they would make them take a 30-minute break, clock out, then go home.
Wow.
Which was, then they caught up to them, which you would obviously.
Yeah, and sometimes it can work to the detriment of the employee sometimes too, but employers need to be careful and just evenly apply a policy where, don't allow the employee to waive the break and leave a half an hour early. I generally recommend have them clock out on time, record it, and then the burden's on them after the fact if they ever claim they didn't take a break. All of your records show that they did take a break. So, but it's tricky, but I think all the operators need to go into that issue with their eyes wide open. And like you said, it's not a matter of if you're going to get sued, it's a matter of when, especially on the meal rest break issues and wage and hour components. It's a difficult situation for operators.
And, there's an old saying in hospitality where, you work through the day. You don't take breaks. You meet a lot of old school waiters, the guys that are up there almost retiring. They'll refuse to take breaks. They're like, no, because every hour, every minute is another table which they can take, and that's tip money where they can make. Right. And that's been a really struggle since I started in hospitality, to be honest with you, for waiters to take their breaks on time. Some of the bigger guys and some of the obviously more organized restaurants are having a break person go through. They'll designate a person each day to give everyone a break, give them a little higher pay, give them a little small percentage of the tip out as well, it's a great system. Everyone takes their turn, and it lets everyone go sit down, have a bite to eat. I'm all about taking breaks. I was very old school when I first started. I would work 12-hour shifts, with 3-4 10-minute breaks, and that's about it. Eat my food real quick standing up. But now, there's value to having a well-rested employee. Morale-wise, injuries are a whole lot less.
Okay.
That's definitely positive.
Yeah. So, and I mean, there's a lot of different procedures you can put into place. And again, if you have a breaker come around and break people, it's going to be a lot easier to defend these kind of claims when they come forward too. So,
Good to know.
you say, look, I don't know why they weren't taking a break. I paid an extra person to come in and relieve people.
And they're on the schedule as a breaker.
Right.
So yeah, definitely a lot of positives behind that. I know it might add a few more hours to your labor, but a few more hours, wouldn't kill you.
Yeah. No, I mean, it leads to my next topic, the minimum wage increases across California. And then we've seen a lot of these local cities and counties now with the higher minimum wage. How are operators dealing with the higher minimum wage issues, and what are some good practices on that front?
That's definitely a top topic in our industry, and it's tough. It's really tough, and it's really heartbreaking and discouraging to be an operator right now in California because of these minimum wage laws. As you know, we don't get a tip credit, and for those of you that know what tip credit is just certain states will downplay your minimum wage, like Arizona and Michigan. Whatever their minimum wage is set for an average employee, it's lower if you're getting tipped, which makes a great balancing game because employers know that you're getting tipped a good amount. They'll adjust your hourly pay, but they'll also give you more hours. They'll give you more tables, more flow for you to make that money. And the hard part is in California is we don't have a tip credit, but the minimum wage goes up, and food prices are going up, direct costs, lease, rents, everything's going up.
Yeah.
And then the public themselves aren't ready to pay those increased prices. So where it really hurts is the bottom line of most restaurants. And that's why you've seen kind of a downturn in some of these sit-down restaurants and going to quick service, which is the largest sector in the industry growing right now. Quick service restaurants, less wait staff. You get more people in the door per minute than sit-down restaurant. And I think the model in California is drastically going to change in the next 5 years of when you walk into a restaurant, and it has to be honest with you, to survive.
Yeah. Okay. Any other operational changes that you see operators making to deal with the higher minimum wage? Is it
Absolutely.
scheduling?
We actually, myself, I deal with taking down your cost of labor quite dramatically, because you'll see that there are certain times of the days, restaurants don't make money every day. I mean, some obviously do better than others, but you got to know when you're really winning and when you're really losing. And if you're losing money on labor, you got to have a balancing game. Just the operation wise, we're tailoring menus a little bit different, how meals are prepared to kind of cut back on labor.
Labor idea behind it,
Absolutely. And there's also just the service model in general. Sit-down restaurants are turning into order counters.
Okay.
Which it's good because the new millennial base is accepting to that, and also restaurant technology has been a big deal. The whole iPads on the table. A few of the big chain guys are doing decent with it. But now the mom and pop shops are, we have to have an iPad on the table or some type of ordering system to alleviate just that labor, because food quality has to stay what it is or even better.
Yeah.
So
you think the technology that's going to find its way into restaurants more and more here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We already see it with all the online ordering apps, table ordering apps, and it's just going to get better, day by day.
There'll be a robot bringing food to your table.
Hey, I wouldn't doubt. I mean, there's already a robot flipping burgers in Pasadena.
I know.
So and that guy gets probably no break.
We have a client. That makes a robot bartender.
Oh wow!
It's like a jukebox, and it shakes the drinks and everything.
I mean, when do you lose the face of hospitality, and what does that mean at that point? Right? You can go for a great meal and have awful service, and you'll be like, that's an awful restaurant. You can go to a restaurant, have great service and an okay meal, and be like, that's a great restaurant, because hospitality will always shine. And I worry about in California if that's just going to go away altogether.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Okay. So how about like hiring and, going through the process of getting an employee on, and then through that process of termination or offboarding the employee too? What have you seen, or what are some obstacles or not very good practices in that regard that you've seen for operators, and some warnings for operators?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think number one warning that's kind of like new in the game is giving your job title a description. I think there's been a lot of times where we've hired staff members, waiters, cooks, prep cooks, or whatever they may be called during the hiring process of the ad, and then we'll ask them, hey, can you go and take out the trash. And they go, that's not my job. And then, the manager writes them up, fires them. I'm sure you've seen some litigation where,
big dispute over that. That's not my job.
Yeah, it's not my job. That's a big one. It's just kind of like laying out what your job duties are on paper. And that's kind of, we come to the employee handbook, go back to that. And did you write your description properly? Did you actually put, this can entail this, that? Even with managers that we're hiring, we have to put down, like, hey, you might some days carry 80 pounds, because they have to move a keg over or, something like that, or 2 kegs over.
Yep.
So we have to put all that in black and white, because then again, we have these people that are hunting out there to take a restaurant down for all they're worth from those little clauses they don't see. Also, but we hire on a regular staff member. Not most restaurants don't do background checks, and you shouldn't, because you take their resume, you take their personality, and you want to really give them an opportunity. A background check will tell you what 5 years ago they had a drug offense. Hospitality in California, we employ the most convicted felons that have done time and pay their service, which is great.
Than any other industry, huh?
Any other industry, we give them a second chance. Kind of going back to that is also.
Well, we have the background check issues now in California, and we've got a lot of local cities too that prohibit employers from doing that background check until at least after the conditional offer of employment's been made.
Which has been a tough one for many employers. I recommend background checking every manager, because we see a lot of con artists out there getting hired. But nowadays, the law, not too long ago changed where we can't do a background check prior to hiring, so we have to hire background check. And I'm not sure, I've heard a few answers on this, maybe you can clarify it. What if you find the manager you hire, the employee you hire has something that's, to the business, not great, like had theft of a prior employer? How do you terminate that? How do you work around that loophole?
Yeah, so, these laws are obviously fairly recent, just coming into play here in 2018. But there does have to be some job relatedness. So, again, the background check has to be done after a conditional offer of employment's been made. So you've interviewed the employee, accepted them and everything, and then you run the background check. And then anything in their past has to be job related. Now, I think there's probably a lot of gray area there. Yeah, for a manager with stealing, is that job related? Potentially, I could see the argument definitely there. But then what if it was petty theft, or what if it was stealing and it wasn't employment related, or it's going to be a lot of gray areas, I think, that come in on that front. So I think employers need to be careful about it. With this law being relatively new, you don't want to be the test case either until we get some litigation going through the courts to see the parameters of the law. Be careful about that. Make sure, obviously, if you're hiring somebody for the kitchen and you're requiring them to have a squeaky clean background, I don't think you can make the argument that that's job related.
Which is not fair. Understood.
Right.
Absolutely. I think the tough area is management in general. When we're hiring people, there seems to be a tainted pool that goes around, gets hired, and has a shady past, which kind of detrimental to the restaurant.
Yeah.
And now we can't even screen that until we hire them. So you're recommending that we have a clause in our hiring for that portion?
Yeah, definitely. When they come on, saying, look, if you are going to do the background check, and definitely got to talk to a lawyer to do the background checks. Just the state law and the local laws now that apply. It's really tricky. And if you are going to do the background check, put that up front with the offer letter. Look, we're making this conditional offer of employment, but you need to pass the background check. And then if something does come up on their background check and you're going to not hire them because of that or terminate their employment because of that, there's a back and forth, and it varies from the state, the city laws and everything. That you've got to make some disclosures to the employee. Some laws require it to be in writing, some don't. And that back and forth needs to be very careful.
That's when we seek someone like you.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I would recommend. That sounds like what I would definitely say.
Yep. And so as long as you're upfront about that, though, and you're getting advice on it, make sure you're complying with the law, you can still rely on that. And, it's got to comply with these laws and be job related and everything. But you can still take it into account.
I understand why these laws, were made. I just don't think that some of the lawmakers understand how they're being dished out,
right,
to be honest with you.
And it's hard, and then a small operator, to actually, have to go through this and make sure that they're complying with the law. There's costs associated with that, and at the end of the day, the operator's trying to protect themselves and make a good decision on the hiring, and hopefully hire somebody, just do it once, have them long term. So yeah.
I mean, to make it clear that I've employed many past convicted felons and have been great employees. I may be honest with you, they're very hardworking. They pay their debt to society. Most of them, understand that it was a wrong thing they did at a bad time, and they get over it. And we have to give them opportunities, because if hospitality doesn't give these people opportunities, who is?
Yeah, like you said, that's the industry, hospitality industry employs the greatest amount of
past convicted felons. Yeah. So that says a lot. That says what kind of people run these establishments, and I understand that some people take advantage of that.
But I mean, I think the whole industry, though, it shows, a lot of people's first jobs in a restaurant, and, it's something you can learn. And that's one thing I think we're losing a lot in society right now, too. Everybody's go to college and stuff. College isn't right for everybody if you're not a book person and stuff. And this is a good avenue for somebody that's really hands-on and wants to create something, and it might not be book smart or
that's a great point you put up. It's also, in our industry, the most interesting portion of it is we deal with so many different walks of life. I'm being a college grad, I interact with people that are just barely getting by, trying to get by, and different walks of life, different types of lives, different ambition in life, but they all have to work under one umbrella. For the most part, if you work at a certain business of an engineering firm, everyone's an engineer, right? Everyone has, I went to this schooling, I went to this, and I did that just like you. Restaurants are not like that. My previous employees, most of them are actors now. Somehow they became famous, or they're engineers, and they've moved on. And then some were started as dishwashers, are now managers and GMs, doing really well for themselves. So I mean, it's an opportunist environment, and that's the most amazing part about this business, is you can do anything you want as long as you work hard at it. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, how diverse it is. Yeah. So how about if you've got a problem employee, what issues do you see create problems on how you terminate the employee, approach the employee, documentation, things like that? What are common errors that you see on the operational side of things?
That's a great point to push out. A lot of times is we have a bad apple in our bunch, and the restaurant management realizes that's a bad apple, but they start taking a biased view of everything that employee does. And that's when I think they get in hot water. Are they equal? Are they fair? And when we say equal and fair, I get a lot of times managers telling me, and I'm talking about manager based, because who's writing these write-ups? Most likely is a manager that's from the floor, that's working the floor. And I ask them, okay, so he came in 10 minutes late. Can I see your timesheets? Well, blah, blah, also came in 10. But he's a great employee.
Right.
I go, look, you can't play favoritism.
Or he's my nephew.
He's your nephew. That's a big one. He's related to me. It's okay. Restaurant theft is a big clause of termination, right? You give away free drinks, you ate free food, you were stealing money with food or somehow, and then I asked them, okay, so who else can go and grab free food? They're like, well, this, and this person. I go, are they managers? No, but we trust them.
Right.
I mean, is that legally sound? Would that be
right? No, that's going to create a bunch of issues when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff, you have to be equal. The biggest issue right now is this: we understand there's bad apples in every bunch. How do you get them out? Is be consistently fair to everyone.
Okay.
Write up everyone, make the same paper trail you do as one person. I think I'm sure you've seen where they just wrote up one employee and didn't call out anyone else. That doesn't.
Right. How about the documentation? I mean, that's the biggest thing. When I get a file and I'm defending a claim, if there's no documentation or poor documentation, is that something you see come up often? And what do you tell clients on that regard?
Well, I'd say document, but nowadays we live in a world of film and audio. When you have a sit-down talk to them, you don't have to obviously film them or record the audio, but sit somewhere within the surveillance camera system, sit down and have that talk. So it's kind of on record that, hey, at this time and day, I spoke to that person, I hand them a write-up, or I give them a verbal warning, and then you can look at the cameras and be like, he did that. I think that's a good burden of proof to push along.
I've found a lot of recording systems that only keep the tape for 30 days or something like that, though, too.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a good point. Some do.
And that's one reminder I have for my clients all the time: document the verbal warnings. all the time. You can't under-document. And, again, an email to yourself, we sat down, had this conversation, or email to a coworker, another manager, we had this conversation, we addressed it. And then that way there's some writing there, or even an email to the employee. Hey, we had this verbal, counseling today. We sat down, we spoke about this. You said you're going to improve on these points. And it's not an official write-up to the employee, but, there is no legal term of what's an official write-up. But just to have some document out there like that is very helpful, I think.
Also, a common practice in restaurants is the manager does a daily log.
Yeah.
The daily log is a great place to be like, hey, I gave this person a verbal warning, blah, blah, blah. So you can always refer back to that daily log.
Yep.
And kind of see how, who you spoke to.
That's a good point. And then the daily log, you still see a lot of operators use that?
I would like to see more operators use that daily
Yeah.
log, to be honest with you. I think sometimes that people are disconnecting with that daily log. And I do advise my clients to use it because they have multiple managers. Not everyone works every day. It's a good point of communication. You
Yeah.
can write down blah, 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 came in late, keep an eye on them. It's just, it's a great form of communication. That's the biggest part of our business. How do you communicate with others?
And for people that might not know, explain the idea behind the daily log. How does that work?
Well, the daily log is just basically, it's a recap of the period of business. We write, hey, lunch was slow. We saw, 35 covers or 150 covers. The food was coming out gray. The food was coming out a little, We had a few, talk about your complaints. You talk about your issues, maintenance issues. Those are all really helpful and to kind of build the scene of what kind of healthy restaurant you have going on. And it's just basically made for the next morning manager to see what happened yesterday. It might have been something as little as, everything went well. This waiter came in 2 minutes late.
Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah. No, and then so it's a way of, each shift, seeing what happened before and some document on going forward. Yeah.
And it's great because you can go back to, the previous year's Thanksgiving dinner that you had and read a little bit about it. You knew the numbers were great, but then you can read a little bit, hey, we had people asking for more bread. We had people asking for more than blah, 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 average apple cider.
Yeah.
It's very helpful. And, there's online systems now, and there's the old school red books, which are great as well.
Okay.
Those are all great stuff to use.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Yeah. No, and one thing I like about the online or like an electronic daily log is you could search it. So
that's a good point.
For litigation, you can search for names. You can search. You don't have to go through 2 years of daily logs.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, because I think people keep them for close to 5 years. The books. So that's a great point. Online and technology is your friend.
Yep, for sure.
It's good to know.
Great. So just to wrap things up, you're going to be at the Western Food Service and Hospitality Expo coming up here in August, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll be there all 3 days, August 19th through the 21st. I'll be hanging out and just going around.
Speaking too, right?
Speaking on Monday with the healthy food panel. I have
Great.
2 restaurateurs that I talk about a little bit of healthy food and menuing and profitability on Monday. But I'll be at the California Restaurant Association booth with you. I'm sure you'll be there.
I'll be there. Our booth is right across the aisle there from the CRA's booth too.
Can we get some legal advice while we're there from you?
Sure. Stop by and hit me up for some legal advice.
Can never get enough of that.
For sure. But that'll be a great event. And then how can people connect with you?
Yeah, great way of connecting with me is go to my website, savoryhospitality.com. You'll see my email, my contact, a little bit more info about what we do and how we do it. We're also on social media. Just search Savory Hospitality, and we pop up anywhere.
Great. Thanks for coming in.
No, thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, and hopefully everybody can reach out to you and connect. And any final words for any of the listeners before we wrap it up?
Well, out of all the negativity that we gave out there, there's a lot of positive. We're a great industry. We're hardworking people. People from person that washes the dishes, takes your food out, takes your order. These are everyday people trying to make, everyday dollars to get by. And the restaurateurs are not fat cats. They're trying to do the best they can to make a living as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, thanks for coming in, Salar.
Thank you. Appreciate it.